The scent of Christmas Day, Italian baked goods, sticky ice block wrappers, hot days by the beach, thirst-quenching cool drinks, chill, pour, sip. In November 22, we released our very first ever ready-to-drink product, our bottled cocktails. Being the first in this kind, we knew we needed a new special strategy to make this work, and it wasn't just going to be another gin launch for us. We knew we needed content that made you thirsty, and it's probably quite cruel of me to put this in front of you before 11 a.m. in a conference, but it does, I think it makes me quite thirsty. So what I started with the presentation just now is essentially how simple we wanted the message to be when communicating our bottled cocktails. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julia. I am the Digital Marketing Officer at Never Never, and I'm thrilled to be here today to speak to you about how we sold out our fastest selling product to date, our bottled cocktails. For those that aren't familiar with Never Never Distilling, we are a gin distillery based in McLaren Vale that started from very humble beginnings in 2017. From 16 square metres in the back of a shed in West Adelaide, Never Never is the story of three mates who set out to push the boundaries of the global gin industry through flavour innovation and a bold, fearless attitude. We have always aimed to make the best gin possible with a flavour-first mentality, and being uncompromising in this is what has led us to where we are today. In our range, we have our triple juniper gin, oyster shell gin, and Australia's first Grenache gin, Ginache, which Sean geniusly named the mixing of Grenache and gin. We aim to walk the walk and cause a stir with every gin we create. It's this zest for pushing the boundaries that has brought us to where we are today, one of the top 10 gin distilleries in the country. So how did we, a small business, and when I say small, the entire marketing team is in this room today, it's just the two of us. I'll start by going into how we managed to do this. We like to keep a full new product development pipeline, not only because our production and venue team are so creative in their new flavours, but because we know this is the path to growth as a small business in this challenging market. To give an insight into how many new products we've launched, in my short 2 years of being at Never Never, we've launched at least 10 new products, which I'm sure you can appreciate as a marketing team of 2 is a lot. So we're always looking for new ways internally to excite our customers, but without having a feeling of, oh, what are we doing this month? We want it to be exciting and with a purpose. So historically, we had made a lot of collaboration products as our new gins. For example, on the screen there, we've got oyster shell gin, which we made with a restaurant in Melbourne called Society. Beeswax and Olive was made with Maybe Sammy, an amazing bar in Sydney. And Pink Pepper Gin is our local Adelaide collaboration we made with Haynes & Co. So we like to use collaborations as a great way, as a stepping off point and leveraging both businesses' audiences. But we weren't going to do this for our bottled cocktails because it came internally from our venue team. The ready-to-pour serves had always been on the radar of our team, but there are 1,000,001 different versions of a very basic Negroni or a martini or a gimlet in a bottle. We wanted to make ours distinctive and unique. Bottled cocktails offered a unique potential to tap into a few aspects of the gin industry we were yet to venture into. They offer convenience, as I said, ready to drink, and appeal to those hassle-free alternatives when you just want to pour something out of a bottle. You don't need to add mixers or anything. It was this expansion into a new product category that gave us the chance to engage with a broader audience, strengthening new relationships with new customers and helping our brand recognition grow. One of the key factors in the new product development is obviously making sure our COGS are sound, and I won't spend too much time on this, but we have an extremely high number of tax in distilled spirits in Australia. It's been increasing by a couple % every year for the past few years. And one of the great things about bottled cocktails is that they are lower in alcohol percentage, so automatically meant that we could reinvest that difference in the content and, excuse me, and in in other aspects of the brand. So 2022 was a big year for us as a brand. It was the first time we invested in that brand itself with a creative agency. And eventually that process landed us with the new platform of Cause a Stir. But we didn't want this to just be the summer campaign of last year. We wanted it to be something we could embody through as much of our work as possible. We wanted to keep pushing the boundaries of flavour and keep executing in as creative of a way as possible. And we in turn asked ourselves, how does what I'm doing cause a stir? And how do we make sure every bottle of Never Never is an invitation to cause a stir? This is an example of some of the overarching creative we launched for our awareness campaign. So, how did we land on the panettone Negroni and the oyster shell gimlet as our flavours? I'm sure this isn't relevant news to many of you in this room, but the Negroni has recently overtaken the espresso martini as the #1 ordered drink over the bar. I never thought I'd have to know that fact for my actual job, but here we are. But we keep a close eye on trends, not only over the bar, but online. And we knew that every time we'd put up a photo of a Negroni, the engagement would be extremely high compared to a standard gin and tonic. In this age of maximising every dollar for the best return on investment, we recognised the immense value our distillery door had for us as our own internal market research tool. Our skilled bar staff constantly experiment with fresh variations on existing cocktails. And we were particularly intrigued in creating our own spin on the Negroni. The result of our efforts is ultimately the panettone. Our take on the traditional cocktail, typically only combining gin, vermouth, and Campari. The original Negroni is a little bit of a bitter concoction. I remember the first time I tried it after joining Never Never. I thought my colleagues were making, it was a bit of a prank, a bit of a hazing, that it was like, oh, let's get the new girl to try the terrible drink. But in the end, it's certainly become one of my favourites, and it's largely because of the panettone Negroni that led me to it. It became a training wheels Negroni because it involves more of a sugary palate and obviously the delicious flavours of the panettone itself. That was something that we paid close attention to when people ordered the Negronis over at the bar. We often were followed up with the phrase, I don't normally like these, but that is damn good. There's also a nice power behind the name. It's just really lands. The gimlet as well had been featured in our Oysterpalooza festival last July. And we felt it catered towards those who were more partial to a sweet tooth. Given it's made of lime juice, sugar syrup and gin, it's almost a mojito. You just need to replace the gin with rum and top it with a bit of soda. But we knew this drinking demographic was important and we didn't want to ignore it and only go for the higher ABV ones. Wanting to capture both audiences, we knew we wanted to cater towards as many tastes as possible. So we set aside a demographic in our database of 18 to 25-year-olds with the gimlets and 25 and above for the Negronis. So that's a bit of a brief overview of why we decided to do the bottled cocktails. Now I'll get into how we sold them out. Content, as they say, is king. And we knew, given this was the first ready-to-drink product of its type in our range, it had to fit the part. This was the first product launch we shot in studio. We chose this to focus on the simplicity of the product. In the same way I started with this presentation, the simple tagline, simple creative, the less is more approach. We wanted to convey that no mixes were required, while still conveying the fact that it's indeed a premium product. Everything in that photo, from the ice, the garnish, the pour, the glassware, was very carefully crafted. You would not believe how long we spend making garnishes right for our photography. I think that our orange peel probably took about 15 minutes to get right. But it's still important, and I think it landed in the end. I also note that given that we are such a small business, our studio is very much in inverted brackets. The basis for which this is sitting on is a Bunnings floor tile, and the backgrounds are from Officeworks. So we have to, as a small business, we have to make the most of what internal resources we have. Our amazing photographer helped us so much with our direction with this, and yeah, it's just making me really thirsty just to look at it. Timing was absolutely essential with this product launch. We knew launching a new product in November is already quite ambitious, given everything else that goes on in that month with e-commerce. But we couldn't ignore that, especially since the previous year we'd had our biggest ever month with a Black Friday sale we'd done for the first time. And panettone is a cake that you often drink around Christmas, so we knew it would pair extremely well when put on the table next to the Christmas lunch. We also used previous e-com data and mapped out the best time measuring our open rates for our EDMs. We didn't want this to just be, we'll just do it first thing in the morning on a Tuesday. We thought long and hard about when we were going to send out that EDM. We also used segmentation, which I'll go into a bit later on. But initially, the bottled cocktails were going to be launched in January as a bit of a bridge between the revenue drop-off that naturally happens after the Christmas gifting season. But I'm so happy we kept it in November, because it ended up being the biggest month we'd ever had through our website, and ended up being a quarter of the entire year of e-com revenue, and bottled cocktails was a large percentage of that. So on our EDMs, given we are in an environment where we are trying to minimise advertising costs as much as we can, or looking for the most cost-effective ways in all aspects of our work, we knew that our direct customers would be the most valuable to us. We initially launched with a broad email to everyone in our database, then started sending we separated out into more engaged audiences. So for example, we kept track of the customers that had visited the distillery door while those specific drinks were on the menu. Now we can't go into the level of did they order that drink over the bar, but at least there's the recognition of them being in the distillery. And it takes them back to that moment when they first walked into our brand and had that initial interaction. We also targeted people who had been heavy buyers, who were most likely to engage with the base spirits for both of the products. So oyster shell gin is the base in the oyster shell gimlet, and triple juniper gin is the base in our panettone Negroni. We decided to go with more of just an immediate drop on social media, instead of doing our standard strategy of posting teasing it out, waiting a week, then launching to our subscribers, then the week later to everyone on our website. We knew we wanted to just make it immediate, flash in the pan, capture that energy. But initially we had planned to have 4 to 6 weeks of content consistently pushing the products, but in the end we had to rein it down to about 3 weeks, because we sold out within 2 of the Negroni and within 4 of the gimlet. When we hit that point of having sold out though, social media was so powerful for us because we were able to offer a waiting list for customers who were consistently messaging, when are you doing a new batch, when are you doing more, we want to see this again. So we were able to use that quite easily and offer a separate EDM list on our database. And then when we did our second batch in March this year, they were the first ones to get that email. Our Facebook ads strategy was pretty much just focusing on awareness with a percentage of retargeting. And we stuck to the classic 70% 30 split for awareness to retargeting. The awareness campaign for the Negroni and the gimlet was focused on communicating how easy they are and to drink, easy they are to approach, and how it's easy to make the step from only really drinking gin and tonics into actually really liking a different type of drink. We also retargeted previous customers that had shown interest in purchasing the bottled cocktails and also those who were interested in a lower ABV product. We offered recipes that you could then add another mixer to then dilute the percentage as well, which as much as it does kind of go in conflict with making it as easy as possible to drink, it's still important to acknowledge that lower alcohol trend is certainly on the rise and we didn't want to exclude them. Word of mouth was extremely huge for this product launch. It's often overlooked in how powerful it can be, but we decided to make this a direct part of the project when we were starting to launch it. So in the lead up to the product launch, aside from it being available at our distillery door on the menu, we used the phrase liquid on lips as a bit of a mantra. We know that our product stands up when people try it, but we just needed that barrier to be overcome so then they could have that initial response to, whoa, this is good juice. So our sales and events team often took along a couple bottles of each of the products to their various tastings, and while also offering tastings of as their standard schedule of our triple juniper gin, they also offered the Negroni as an example of this is what you can create with this as your base spirit. And we kept seeing the same feedback we'd had at the distillery door. This is crazy, how am I enjoying a Negroni? I normally hate strong drinks, was the common one. And we just knew that it was hitting the mark with a lot of people. So at that point, the sales team also offered the customer an opportunity to be added to a list, so then they knew we're going to be the first to be notified when the new product was available. And that's certainly something that we're looking at implementing even further, given how strong the response was with these products. We also used such a simple tagline to ensure that it was easy to communicate. When the sales and events team have such a short amount of time to talk to new customers, we really wanted to make sure that that was lasting. And not only do we to compete with the gin and spirits category, you're also competing with every other kind of alcohol that's available in that store. So it needs to be as easy as possible to communicate and not feel like it was an exclusive club or an exclusive sort of drink, which often can be the case with stronger kind of drinks. It was so important to us that the customers needed to understand fully what the product was when they were buying it, and we were able to achieve that with just a few sentences. PR was an incredibly important part of this rollout as well. This was effective in our both local and interstate partnerships. It was highly important at broadening our audience to those who are already loyal in these respective partnerships as well. Our amazing PR agency, HHPR in Sydney, continues to reach out with further opportunities regarding the bottled cocktails, and it's been pretty crazy to see what publications we've managed to be featured in. The bottled cocktails were featured in Broadsheet, Food and Drink Business, Gourmet Traveller, Glam Adelaide, and Delicious.com. We even had a review by Max Allen, very prestigious food critic, from the Australian Financial Review, who just gave us an incredible recommendation saying that the drink is beautifully balanced and seamless, flowing like a mellow liquid cake across the tongue. I couldn't have said it better myself. But that's certainly the first time we'd used PR as an active part of an e-commerce launch for a new product. We'd only really used it previously for partnership products, and then most of that content was promoting the partnership itself and how we were able to engage with each other. So to sum up, this launch was really about maximising our existing resources. Our ad budget was small and continues to be small, and we had to get creative when it came to effective e-commerce. And in the end, as I said, it was a quarter of our yearly e-com in November. We ended up selling out the Negronis within 2 weeks and the gimlets within a month, which is 2 times faster than any of our next best performing product launch. We've still got a waiting list for when our next batch of products will be available. And the marketing of this product was definitely one of the more challenging ones because we wanted to make it, we wanted to reinvent our own little wheel for a while. It's been a really positive experience though, and considering how hard it can be to sell liquor at a premium price point, especially in a challenging market, if we're able to maintain that point of difference, that's where we can win. We don't want to engage in a race to the bottom. We know this is a premium product, and yeah, well, we managed to sell it out. So that's sort of everything I had about our bottled cocktails, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Julia. You know, I'm glad you got quick on your preso. Do you know how many questions there are here? Don't be scared. Everyone's very kind. I'm going to stand over this side, seeing as you're over there. All right, so Michael Gallo, your question's going to be last, okay? Okay. You mentioned Negroni overtaking Espresso Martini as the most ordered cocktail over the bar. If you're taking a survey of one, i.e. me, I'd say that's not true. But the question was, where do you find that kind of data? That's the first part. And then there was someone else who had a related question. And I think there are it's fairly common for South Australian business. The fact there are 2 of you on the team, that's a luxury. Normally it's a team of 1. So with a marketing team of 2, how do you then gather that market data and those sort of insights around sort of, I guess, consumption trends?
Yep. So we rely a lot on our distributor for that information. So our account managers sort of work with bars directly, and their sales reps are always going into bars, engaging with bar owners, bartenders, everyone involved in on-prem service. So we get a lot of direct feedback there, but we certainly all pay close attention to industry publications as well, like Bartender Magazine, Drinks Trade, and also Australian Liquor News. So it's all industry information, both direct and publications.
Cool. Did the surge in interest for Negroni coincide with the viral video of Emma Darcy from Game of Thrones discussing it as her favourite drink? This is from Matt Bennett.
Great question. We released our bottled cocktails in November last year. I believe House of the Dragon launched in this year, so it was after that trend. But we certainly saw a very popular uptake in the Negroni Spagliato drink searches on our website for the second batch, which was in March. So it wasn't... Negroni existed before House of the Dragon, Emma Darcy, but we certainly loved the support for it after.
Okay, here's a follow-up question here. So these 2 are fairly closely related, so I'm going to combine them. So this one comes from Carmen, who's actually speaking, I think tomorrow, Carmen's speaking on creativity and community. What are some key things that you consider when trying to communicate a taste through a screen? And then following on from that, this one from Ashley Playfair. If porridge is not an option, what sort of marketing opportunities and partnerships do you look for to promote new and existing products?
Can you just repeat the first question?
repeat the first one.
Sorry.
So they're related, but
Yes.
let's go with Carmen's first. What are some key things you consider when trying to communicate a taste through screen?
It's a good product. It's a good question.
Of course, it's a good product, Julia. We have to say it. One of the co-founders is here. He's in the back of the room. Also, the triple juniper was excellent, so I was a juniper freak. Anyway.
Oh, thank you, Romina. So communicating taste, we focus on the other senses that we're able to tap into. Obviously, you're not able to actually taste the product itself through the digital screen, but we use the same trigger words that we would use in our kind of QC panels, like the smell, the, what's the word? I guess we also like to take it back to the situation where you'd be most likely to enjoy that product. So one of the things we wanted to show with these products was how you just bring a bottle to your dinner party, bring a bottle to the table, share it with friends. You know, as I said, hot drinks by the beach, like gimlets, when they're ice cold on the beautiful sands at Aldinga is certainly a place that I've enjoyed one. So it was kind of taking people back to that moment where we knew they'd get the most enjoyment out of that product. And incredibly important to make sure that the photography is on point. We needed to make sure it was clear, crisp, concise, basically makes you thirsty. And
Speaking of the photography and the creative, it's gorgeous, beautiful. Someone actually asked, which creative agency did you partner with to put that together?
Saatchi & Saatchi for the Cause a Stir creative.
Fancy. We don't have a budget, but we're working with Saatchi & Saatchi. Have you ever heard a more ridiculous notion? Okay. All
It was
right.
last year's budget, Rubina.
We work with Saatchi & Saatchi, you know, like we just don't have much of a marketing budget at all.
We had
Funny.
an in. Sorry, just what was that second question?
So I'm going back to Ashley's now. Sorry, it just seemed timely to ask you about the agency. Ashley Playfair came up with, if porridge is not an option, what sort of marketing opportunities and partnerships do you look for to promote new and existing products? So I think, you know, how do you guys do, does Never Never do activations?
With budget, we absolutely do. A whole range of different things with partnerships. It's certainly something that has been put a bit on the back burner this year, given the constraint, but it's certainly something we look to in the future. So we look at existing relationships that are kind of mutually beneficial. So Haynes & Co is a great example. It was the very first bar that we ever poured gin. So that was our kind of first flagship venue. So we knew we wanted to do something that was both beneficial to us as a brand and to kind of nurture that relationship as well. We recently, November last year, partnered with Port Adelaide women's football team, and that was really important to us because it's the new team in the Women's AFL. We wanted to show our support for the South Australian growing Women's Football Association, and our brand first home was at the back of Big Shed Brewing in quite close to Port Adelaide. So it's a local area to us, and we wanted to kind of reinvest that back in the community as well. So all different things. Please talk to us if you're interested.
This might be more a question for Sean, but are you looking to further respond to the demand for no and low alcohol products?
Yes, we certainly are. The tricky thing is to make sure it still stands up to our flavour standard, and it's an incredibly difficult process because we want to maintain a high standard and we don't just want to be making cordial. So it's certainly something we're working on, and we definitely want to get to a point where we're able to produce that, but it is quite tricky, and it's something we're working with our distributor as well to ensure that we can make it work on the COGS end as well. But it's certainly something to pay attention to. We don't want to ignore it. It's important to cater towards as many different kind of drinking styles as possible, and there's definitely people within the team that surprisingly don't drink gin.
Thanks, Chrissy. That was a great question. I think you only have to go into a Dan Murphy's to go to the non-alcoholic section and just to see the explosion of options available, particularly in the spirit section. It's incredible. Four Pillars, I will say, they've got a nice one.
They do.
But yeah, it's certainly a growing market for sure.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So let's talk about influencers now. Caitlin asks, was influencer partnerships and gifting part of the PR strategy for the launch?
It was. We gifted it more to sort of industry food critics, though, that would then be able to write it in their articles, just because we knew that that was kind of the demographic we were going for, especially with the Negroni. But certainly something we're looking at in the future is the gifting for the influencer partnerships. We did actually do a partnership with our Valentine's Day campaign this year, which was "We Are Never, Never Getting Back Together." And yeah, that was the first time we'd done a big sort of influencer package, and that was a really positive response to that. So certainly something is going in the budget.
Can I ask you what kind of, because the follow-up question from Louise is, do you use influencer marketing to promote the brand and the product range? So going further in on that, was there a specific kind of criteria? Were you looking for people with an interest in alcohol, or was it more just, you know, this person has a big following and so let's get the brand in front of people? Like, what kind of criteria lens did you put on the influencers you wanted to work with?
It's more campaign specific, I would say, because if we just gift every alcohol influencer, it's kind of, we're just like...
Hang on, if you gift every alcohol influencer, there's at least 230 people here who need a bottle, right? Do you bring 230, Sean, or just one? Sorry, you go.
Yeah, it's certainly... sorry, what was the question?
I know, we got distracted there for a minute. Influencers, how do you select them? Like,
yes,
how do you select the ones you want to work with? You know, the food and wine critics, that's one side of things.
Yes.
But the more sort of, I guess, social media influencer in that kind of context, what kind of criteria would you look at?
Yeah, so we look at how mutually beneficial they can be to us and to their following. So the girls we engage with for the Valentine's Day campaign had that kind of sketch, little tongue-in-cheek kind of style comedy, and they had done a couple other, not alcoholic, but drinks-specific products before, and they had really positive engagement. So we interacted with them based on what their content is, because we wanted it to feel quite natural. We don't want it to feel like #spawn right from the get-go. We wanted it to seem a bit more authentic. So we try to look for people that really engage with, especially if it's a collaboration, they're really engaged with that kind of brand as well. We've got some good examples of that coming up in our next collaboration. We're doing a very South Australian themed brand, and I can't say any more, but influencers is certainly part of that strategy.
Would you ever partner with Fruit Chocks?
Absolutely.
Polly, if you're here, come talk to Never Never.
We'd never say no to anyone initially.
I just feel like surely there's a match there. Do like a special Christmas product and, you know, rinse, repeat the Panettone experience, and Polly will win out as well. So, Polly, make sure you get these guys up.
I'm sure it's quite a similar flavour. How are you going to get to the flavour of the fruit choc in the Negroni or something?
Yeah.
But we're happy to talk to everyone, really. We don't discriminate. We're just really happy to work with great brands.
So here's a question, and as someone who is a whiskey fan, Banded was very tricky to get anyone's hands on, really, because there was such a limited run. But is that actually part of your product strategy, that scarcity and exclusivity? And, you know, obviously you mentioned before, now people are on the waiting list to get more of the bottled cocktail. Is that part of the strategy for Never Never, to be somewhat unavailable for some of the products, to be some, you know, yeah?
So I would say it's only really the whiskey that kind of is the scarcity of the product. We know that if we are a bit scarce, then the demand can go up a little, but we don't want there to be many barriers of entry for our brand. The scarcity of the bottled cocktails is purely because they're made in a certain number of litre batches, and then once we sell them out, we try and anticipate the demand, but they are made internally with our venue team, and given it's quite a small team, if they're working at the venue, that sort of takes precedence over creating the batch of new bottle cocktails. So it certainly is something that we're trying to get on top of. But with the whiskey, it was a once-off. So we probably won't be doing another whiskey unless there's something I don't know about. But
there's a big shaking of the head going on at the back of the room there. So that's that sounds
never
like
again.
That looks like a. Okay, that's all good. I have another question here for you. How do you find the line on socials when promoting alcohol? What considerations do you need to make? Obviously, you've got a product here that it's 18 plus.
Yes.
So how do you kind of get around social sometimes just being a bit overzealous and going, nope, content denied? How do you get around that?
Well, we are a signatory of ABAC, and we do take that very seriously. So we don't want to we want to make sure we're doing the right thing by the general public and the health concerns that there are with alcohol. We never want to encourage excess consumption, and ABAC actually provides some really great guidelines and case studies of previous campaigns that have been what we would consider to be borderline, but then have been sort of flagged and banned from advertising. So we're not allowed to sort of convey alcohol drinking in excess, obviously. We're not allowed to show it near bodies of water. We're not allowed to show anyone under the age of 25 as drinking. So we do take it pretty seriously, but we just vet it internally. And our managing director, George, is on a lot of distillery committees in the States, so he's always got a ear to the ground with trends and where the legalities are. But it is certainly something that we pay a lot of attention to. And even some platforms, like we're not allowed to be on TikTok to sell. Yeah. We can just put content out there about the location of where we are, about the products, but we're not allowed to have any sort of click here to buy now because it's not an age-gated audience. Yeah. And then to help us with that as well, we don't really advertise a lot in the 18 to 21 demographic anyway, except if it's the venue, because they tend to be a stronger demographic in that.
Yeah, true. This one comes from Anna Maria. What strategies or campaigns have helped most to grow your online audience and also to grow your social audience too?
Definitely sort of competitions we find to be quite effective at growing audiences. We did one earlier in the year, which is winning a year's supply of gin, and we asked people to submit sort of how they're going to cause a stir with that throughout the year. Obviously, that we checked with ABAC as well, very strict guidelines on how many we were allowed to give away. But competitions has been a good way recently, given we didn't want to spend as much money on sort of gaining new audiences like previous years. We do offer subscriber tastings at the venue, so if you come to our distillery door, you'll be asked if you'd like to sign up. You'll get a free sample of one of our new products. So that's been a really effective way and kind of links back to that sort of liquid on lips mentality as well.
So kind of then sort of jumping on that as well, obviously you've got that interaction there at Cellar Door. So the question, this one is an anonymous one, but how do you collaborate with the sales team and other non-marketing team members at Never Never, given that you are a small team, to help out with digital marketing efforts? Yeah,
so occasionally throughout the year, Sean and myself will go to the venue team and do sort of a brand refresh and update and keep them in queue with what we're doing in the online world. I did a presentation last year sort of showing a lot of the new... We hire a lot of Christmas casuals, so we wanted to make sure they were as involved as the higher-ups at the venue as well. So we took them through a presentation of what happens after they get that sign-up and, like, where does that go in our digital world. And we really want to engage them because signing up people for the sake of signing up, it's not going to empower them to want to engage with the brand. So we really focus on that brand energy, the language that we use. We try to match that with what our tone of voice is on social media as well. And yeah, it's just, we try to engage with them as much as we can, really, because that way they feel like they're actually a big part of the Never Never world.
Just on PR activity, how do you measure the impact of PR on e-commerce sales?
So we do put links in a lot of, UTM links in some articles when they're digital. Obviously it's really tricky with sort of printed publications. It's really not going to be able to have an immediate reaction, but we do engage with our PR agency and get sort of statistics, and we kind of take the readership numbers and use 2% of that as an accurate read. So we're being modest, but that way we can at least kind of understand what an accurate sort of estimated reach is. And we hear colloquially, especially from sort of the demographic that are more likely to be reading the paper and seeing things around, we certainly hear a lot of word of mouth feedback. Oh, I saw this in, this magazine, or my dad's always telling me, oh, you're in the Qantas mag again, that kind of thing. So a lot of it comes word of mouth, but it is quite tricky to measure e-commerce unless it comes through that clicking through to the website, which is what we try and, we always
Push
know,
where possible.
Yeah, where possible, yeah.
Here's an anonymous question. If marketing's been so successful and the product's selling out, why has the budget continued to be so limited and by the sound of it cut?
That's probably not a question for me. That's probably a question
How about we
for
take that one
the managing
offline? If you
director.
bail up Sean after, he might give you an honest answer, or he might just give you a bottle of Never Never and tell you to go away. Tax is a fair answer, actually.
Tax.
To be fair, the rising tax on alcohol products, yeah, absolutely. Excise is not your friend.
No, but we try to make it work, really. It is a tricky thing we have to deal with. It's not just tax, we kind of measuring success a bit differently this year to last year because we know that everyone's purse strings are a little tighter. Yeah. Premium products, we know we're going to be up against it. Everyone's living costs are increasing. So we just want to make sure we're as approachable as possible.
So there is a follow-up question on that. How has cost of living crisis impacted your marketing strategy?
It has impacted the budget, certainly. It is certainly something we have paid close attention to. We're not hitting people maybe our frequency we've definitely lowered just because we know that if we keep hitting people that hard, they're going to get sick of us real quick. We're trying to have more content coming out more frequently, so it's fresh and new and doesn't feel we don't have that content fatigue. And we know where we sit in terms of the priority in people's lives, and we know that we just want to make sure that our content feels as that little escape to that. So we're not always asking people to buy. We measure a lot of our success in terms of engagement as well. So sometimes we are just asking people to, we're just wanting people to like and engage with the content, even though if it doesn't translate to a sale immediately, we know that down the line it will turn into a sale and at least have that brand recognition going. It's always the brands that stay on during the tough times that perform better afterwards.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're trying to maintain that presence while we can.
So here's a quick one from Olivia. There's some really good questions on product and price because so often we talk about promotion and forget about the other P's in marketing. This one's from Olivia Manser. How do you price the Gimlet product, for example, in comparison to your gins, which have a higher alcohol percentage? Especially because the Gimlet is aimed at a younger market who may not be spending as much money on alcohol. Just how do you guys consider pricing in that context? And then obviously cost of living pressures over the top now.
Yeah. Well, it's all sort of driven to, this is a really good question. It's a lot of it comes from the production team who have the raw cogs of how much it costs. And then obviously we need to make some sort of profit to keep going. But it's certainly something that we're trying to make sure our products are a little bit more approachable, because we do have some that are nudging $100, which is quite expensive for a gin, but it's making sure that we cater towards both ends of the spectrum. So our triple juniper is our cheapest product and it is our most popular, and we don't want to make it any more expensive than we have to. Obviously, when juniper freight costs 3 times as much as it did 5 years ago when we first did the products, that same price isn't going to be able to hold up internally. But we do want to make sure that we have a broad range of prices. So the Gimlet was certainly something that I would have liked to have been a tiny bit cheaper as well, just because it is a different style to Negroni, but it is ultimately, at the end of the day, that was the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's about 50 other questions here, which, unfortunately we don't have time for. But I do have a couple quick ones, and I want some quick answers because I can hear morning tea rustling out there, and I bet everybody's starving.
Yes.
So, I need another coffee because, we're all dying here. So can you just tell us quickly, tech stack, what CMS do you run for the website?
Magento.
Email, marketing software?
Klaviyo.
Klaviyo, fun. If anyone doesn't know what Klaviyo is, check it out, particularly if you're in e-com. Okay. What do you use for CRM?
That's our sales team.
Not sure. Okay, we'll come back to that. And then the final question here is from Mr. Michael Gallo. Did you bring any samples for us today?
I don't have samples, but it is one of the prizes everyone can win today, I believe.
It certainly is. Please thank Julia Foley, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.